Hi, thank you for watching my channel today. My name's Sarah and my channel is called Your Two Shelf. Today I'm doing another recent reads and hauls video like I did last week. This is a very slightly different because there were 3 books that I read in the month of, I think it was July, where my camera stopped working before I'd finished with my wrap up, and I forgot then in August to wrap them up. So I'm going to wrap them up now because they're books that are worthwhile wrapping up. So I'm going to start with those. So the first book that I want to wrap up is called The Henna Wars by Adiba Jaigirdar. This is a book I haven't seen on BookTube apart from on one person's channel, and it's such a worthwhile book that I really want everyone to pick it up. I gave it 5 stars, I really loved it. So this book is by an author who is living in Ireland, and she's from a Bangladeshi Muslim background. And the book is a YA book. It's set in a secondary school, and I think the students are probably year 11, which is about 16. And it follows Nishat, who is a girl of that age, and she lives with her parents and her younger sister, who she's really close to. And they have a thing in secondary schools in the UK, we called it Young Enterprise, but you have like a business project that you have to do over a few weeks, and you have to try and use it to make some money, and then the person who has the best business idea wins a prize. So that's what the premise of the book is based around. And Nishat is at a wedding and she's doing henna, and people are complimenting her on her designs and things, and then she thinks this would be actually a great idea for my business if I did henna designs and hennaing for the other students. So she starts that. And then at the wedding, she also meets a girl called Flavia, who is not of the same culture as her. And Flavia also has the idea that her and her cousin, who is also at the school, can do a henna business as well. So then the girls are kind of like competing against each other. And Nishat thinks this is really unfair because of the cultural appropriation that is going on. Also, Nishat is a lesbian and she is falling for Flavia. Doesn't know if Flavia has the same feelings as her or not. Nishat is coming out to her parents, and it deals with how that works for her as part of a Muslim family. And she doesn't know whether Flavia is straight or not. And she also doesn't want to fall for her because of the henna wars with the business. So there's all those things going on. It's a really brilliant YA book. I'd really recommend it. And yeah, I thought it had covered so many important issues. And yeah, 5-star read. And the second one I wanted to talk about is Untamed by Glennon Doyle. So I really like Glennon Doyle, and whenever I've seen her like on Super Soul or like on stage for some talks or whatever, I've always kind of found that what she says resonates with me. But I had like a mixed opinion of this book. I was so looking forward to it. As soon as it came out, I got it on Audible straight away. Glennon reads it herself, and I'm not sure if that adds or takes away from me from how she reads it, because I guess I then hear it how she's thinking it, I suppose. So the premise of the book is basically about like the sort of constraints that society puts on women in the way they should look and behave, and what opinions they should have, and how they should you know, run their lives and bring up their children, and all the kind of expectations and stuff, and how they just want to be untamed. You know, they just want to be free to do what they want and to remember who they are, who their wild selves are. And so that's something which definitely appeals to me. And then she also talks about how she got divorced and from the father of her 3 children, and then she fell in love with a woman called Abby, and she married Abby. And it talks about like their relationship as well. So all of these things are interesting things. But in amongst all the gems, so lots of this book I was like really resonated with me, and I really agreed with what she was saying. But then a lot of parts of the book I found were quite fluffy. Like a lot of the conversations that she talks about, I just didn't believe the conversations how she's written them, because they're not how people talk. They don't sound conversational, they sound like they've been written out and rehearsed. And she did some issues kind of spot on for me, and then other issues I think, well, why are you making a massive deal out of nothing? Like, she makes this whole section on how she totally freaks out if anyone rings the doorbell and like they disturb her, which I just didn't really understand the point of. And then there was like a big section on how her daughter wanted to try out for a football team, and Abby was encouraging her, and then she was like, oh my gosh, but what if she doesn't get in, and what if she fails, and what if it's a massive disaster, let's just not let her try, because I don't know, she just felt it's, and like she says how she wants to be in control of everyone and everything. I don't know, so I just found like some parts really resonated and they were like, yes, I totally agree. Other parts were like, what the hell are you talking about, or this is just like kind of Clinton cards fluff that I'm not really quite sure why this needs to be in the book. So I was disappointed. I still like Glennon. I still would read more of her books, definitely. But this one was a disappointment to me, I'm sad to say. And then the third one that I wanted to wrap up was the first in the Poldark series by Winston Graham. So this is the series that I picked up at the library as lockdown was occurring, and the library was about to shut, and I thought it was Outlander, but it was Poldark. I got them confused, but I wanted to read it anyway. So Poldark is it's set in, I think it's like the 1600s, the first book, in the tin mining industry in Cornwall. And Ross Poldark has just come back from the war in America, and he has come back. His dad has died. He's left him with a very small estate. It's very run down. The servants he has are like running amok. The whole place is a massive tip. The mine isn't making any money, and he basically has to kind of try and gain control of everything again. And he gets a new servant called Demelza. And what else do I want to say? It was, for me, a 4-star read. It's quite a big book, but it's interesting to read about Cornwall in those times. I quite like stories about sort of country houses and stuff like that, set in the past. And so I don't have masses to say, but I enjoyed it. And I've just got the second book in the series recently from a charity shop. So I think there's quite a lot in the series, like 7 or 8. And they all move forward 3 times. So anyway, that's that one. So moving on to actually the last week. So I finished my audiobook, which was Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid. So I talked about this last week because I was in the midst of it last week. And basically, I thought it was a very strong book. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.5 stars. The reason I knocked half a star off was because the ending I felt was a little bit rushed. And I didn't quite agree with how the ending was done. I thought it would have been better if it hadn't skipped ahead in time. So I think everyone knows the premise of this book, and I talked about it last time, but it's basically, without going into the sort of plot points, it's basically a book about a young black woman in her mid-20s who has 2 white people in her life, her boyfriend and her employer, and they both feel like they know best about how to help her run her life and interfere where they have no business interfering. And that's the kind of a very nutshell premise of the book. But I felt like this book discussed race really well. It discussed relationships, what it's like to be young, what it's like to be hard up, what it's like to be like a caretaker of a child who you really care for, about what it's like for people, society, to have certain opinions of people and how they feel they have to meet certain expectations. And I just think that it was a really well done book. This doesn't really feel the right forum to wrap it up almost, because I could probably spend a longer time talking about why I like this book so much, but I don't want this video to be super long. But all I want to say is go and read it. I thought the audio was fantastic. and I've seen so many people discussing it. I sort of feel like I'm rehashing opinions if I discuss it at length, but I have discussed it with some friends on BookTube, which I've really enjoyed doing, and it hasn't made the Booker shortlist, which was announced this week, sadly, but I think it's a very worthwhile book and I definitely recommend it. So this, I talked about Testament of Youth last week, the war diaries of Vera Brittain from the First World War, and I'm now this far through. So what I've been doing, because it's quite a difficult to read and sad book, it's in 3 parts, and I've been reading another book in between each part to sort of break up the sadness. So I finished part 2 this week, which is quite long. It's like 200 and something pages, and it took me about 2 minutes to read each page because the writing is just so good that you don't want to just skim over it. So this covered her time between her going to France and the war ending. So the war was just ended at the end of part 2. She has experienced further tragedy in her personal life, which I won't spoil. She writes about what it was like to be in the war in France, and like how in the theatres when they were doing the surgeries, they just end up having to chuck all of the unwanted body parts on the floor. So there'd be like guts on the floor, bits of limb on the floor, like really poor sanitation, and then all they could really do for all of the soldiers was like bandages, like copious bandaging was pretty much all they could do. There was no antibiotics or anything like that, and so she spent a lot of time bandaging. And also she talks about how like one of the hospitals she worked at, they had to wash up the bedpans and the bandages and stuff in the same sink that they had to wash up their cups of tea, and I was just like, ugh. And so it's no wonder so many people died of sepsis, but it's a fantastic book. I still highly recommend it, and I'm not sure what happens like in terms of her life in part 3, because the war is over, so I guess it's her sort of going back to where she left off before the war, but her life is obviously completely different to how it was. So that's what I've been reading the most of the time. And what I'm listening to on audiobook now, it's a bit of I'm not sure if I'm going to DNF, so we'll see, but it's The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary, and this is an Audible book that is read by a male and a female narrator, and the premise is that the main character, whose name I can't remember, is looking for somewhere to move to because she's split up with her boyfriend. She has a really minuscule budget. She works at a magazine. She's the editor for a magazine, which is a craft magazine, and it makes very little money, so she's quite hard up, and she's only got a budget of £400 a month to spend in London. And she finds an advert for somebody who is a nurse, a male nurse who works nights, and he is going to be only in the house in the daytime, or the flat in the daytime, and so he wants to share with someone who needs it just for when he's at work and he's away at weekends. So she can basically live in the house from kind of 6 p.m. until the morning and at weekends. So she's just going to have an interview there and see if she thinks it's a good option or not, which obviously I'm guessing it does because of the title. I don't know if there's going to be a romance, so I'm not sure. I haven't reread the blurb since I got the audio. At the moment it's just okay. It's not setting my world on fire. I'm not desperate to go back to it, but I'm only like 45 minutes in or something, so I'm going to give it a bit longer and see if I either get into it or whether I DNF it and return it to Audible. And then what else am I reading? I haven't made any further progress on Happy by Fern Cotton or on Expedition by Steve Backshall. Oh yeah, so the thing I'm actually reading at the moment is one of the Book Prize books which has made it onto the shortlist, and that is The New Wilderness by Diane Cook, which I am buddy reading with Kieran from KD Books. I'll link his channel below. So this is one of the ones I was really excited about when the Booker list came out initially, and it's a book, it's a debut by an American author, and it's about a group of people, I think there's 20 of them, who live in a time period which is unspecified, but basically where nature doesn't exist anymore, so trees, animals, everything doesn't exist anymore, and they've run out of space. And the government has, so it's set in America, the government has this kind of wilderness project that they're doing, where they've got a huge area of land. It's not clear how much area, but a very large area of land, where they want to put these people with rangers, and they want to re-establish nature and have it as an experiment to see what happens. The people have been there for about 6 or 7 years now. Like, they've had children, some people have died. There is lots of politics going on in the group, lots of kind of discussion about whether they should break any rules. They have to go to these places called posts. There's different posts around this land where they have to go and like take their rubbish to be weighed in, pick up any mail. Sometimes they get some supplies and things from there. They have to give blood samples, fill in questionnaires. And they're just making this big trek to a new post they've never been to at the moment. So I am not normally a fan of sort of post-apocalyptic type books. This one initially was really drawing me in, and I was really enjoying it. I'm now 25% of the way through, and it's sort of stalling a bit for me. So I'm not sure whether it's going to pick up or not. Kieran and I were saying at the moment that we don't really care what happens to the characters that much. So we'll see as we get further in whether that changes as well. So that's what I'm reading at the moment. So talking about hauls this week, I have hauled a magazine which I saw on Lauren from Lauren and the Bix channel that she subscribes to, and I thought I'd buy an issue to see what it was like. And this is the Simple Things magazine. This is the September issue, and this is all about, as you can see, all about touch. But the premise of the magazine is basically about kind of slow, simple living, about things that can make us happy, that are quite small, sort of everyday things. There's some recipes, there's some crafts, there's some short stories. I have made one of the recipes. So I made this one, which was super nice. So yeah, there's so far I'm about halfway through, and there's about like painting mugs, there's about people who've got different senses of style, there's like a travel section, there's people who've set up their own craft businesses, there's about a guy who takes photos of hotel carpets, there's a good news section, and yeah, it's just there's a few kind of sections on home decor and that kind of thing. So I've just been really enjoying it. Ooh. I don't know if I'll subscribe every month, but I'm definitely going to buy some more of the magazines. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that. And then I've bought a new audiobook with my credit this month, which is The Antidote for Everything by Kimmery Martin. So I saw this first talked about by Jessie from Bowties and Bix, and they have given it a really good wrap up, and I've mentioned it. I think is it just on Jessie's channel that I've seen it, possibly, but I haven't seen it widespread on BookTube, but they've recommended it loads of times. And so the book is set in the States. It's about 2 doctors, so obviously that appeals to me, who are working in a hospital. I think one's a urologist, and she has a best friend who is gay, and she goes out of the country for a conference or something, and the best friend calls her and says, well, just while you've been out of the country, the hospital has just made this rule that we're not allowed to treat any trans patients anymore. And so, according to Jessie, which I didn't know this, it's actually fine if they're privately owned hospitals. They're basically allowed to do that. And Jessie said that there are lots of hospitals in the States who will have a blanket ban on treating trans people. And they said about how there was recently like somebody who died in A&E or something because they were a trans patient and they weren't allowed to be treated at the hospital, which I find like so shocking. We have no restrictions on who we treat in the NHS, and it's very much for everyone, and I find that like absolutely appalling that it's legal for hospitals to do that. So apparently, the woman who tries to then help sort of puts their foot in it and does it all wrong and makes everything worse. So sounds really fascinating, and I'm always like having trans representation in books, especially like medical stories always appeal to me as well. So I'm really looking forward to reading or listening to this one, and that's the only one I've hauled along with a magazine this month, which is good for my TBR. So that's everything I've been up to this week. Please let me know sort of what you've been reading and buying and enjoying, and whether you've read any of the books that I've talked about or want to read any of them. And I will speak to you soon. Bye!